Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Open Banking Expo TV. I'm Ellie Duncan, Head of Content here at Open Banking Expo, and today my guest on OBE TV is Alex Reddish, Chief Commercial Officer at Tribe Payments, a payments technology provider. Now, Tribe was the first issuer processor to build and launch initial compliance ABIs for fintechs. Alex joins me today to discuss how the payments and financial services industries have responded to the pace of innovation and change, particularly over the past year, as well as the role that payments partnerships can play and its own partnership with Tink. Hello, Alex. Welcome to OBE TV.
Hi, thanks for having me. Honor to be here.
Well, why don't we start it with you just explaining a little bit more, if you will, about your role at Tribe Payments and what that entails, please.
Goodness me, yeah, it changes on a daily basis. I think that's the joy of a young business. But at the moment, I would say, I'm predominantly responsible for the majority of the business from a business strategy perspective, from a product strategy perspective, but also our existing partnerships, our existing clients, and our new business, and then working with the team on the marketing front to sort of develop new campaigns, new ideas to sort of position Tribe as both a thought leader and an innovator in the industry. I've been at Tribe just over 3 years now, just under 3 years, sorry. Don't want to wish it away. And loving every day.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of parts to your role, and we're going to come on obviously to talk about partnerships as well in a bit more detail. But it seems that kind of one of the biggest sort of challenges that the payments industry faces is keeping up with the kind of pace of change and changing consumer demands and needs. As I highlighted at the start, particularly over the past year, with digitization having been accelerated by COVID-19, of course. So what's your view on all of this?
I think, I don't think anyone can argue that the pace of digitization has ultimately accelerated through lockdown or through the pandemic. I think we were on that path already. I think we've just seen an expedition or that expediting of that process. I think what we've seen as sort of what's really been impressed on me or Tribe as a business is that consumer demand or expectation or end user demand, let's call it, for a more seamless experience, a more data or personalized experience. And I think we're, that continued focus on security and safety within the financial services arena is becoming a more conscious topic of the less educated when it comes to what financial products can deliver versus what the options are. I think the amazing thing from my perspective is that you only have to go back, and I've worked for banks before Tribe, and you go back and you think, it's only 5-6 years ago we were accepting of wet signatures or checks or things like that. And I think the pandemic, from my perspective, has just elevated the consumer expectation of what is table stakes. And so we're now all striving to keep up. And I think that's a really exciting time for the industry, because ultimately we're being forced to change and forced to grow up. We're a young business, we're being forced to grow up. So it's just great time. I think the final piece I'd say is probably that, now slightly biased, I suppose, but as a technology provider, those core foundational elements that you use to determine your success in the future become ever more important. I think you want to find, a partner for tomorrow, not just today, ultimately.
And in a way, do you think that some of those kind of changing consumer needs have, in a way, put a bit of pressure on the industry, because consumers now have kind of standards, perhaps, when it comes to payments that maybe they didn't have, prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, I think, but that's a great thing, though. I think giving a consumer a choice and giving them the ability to pick the services that they believe are relevant, I think that's a win for everyone. I think it makes it a really interesting opportunity for us all to grow. And also, we're now building products that people need rather than products that we think people need. And I think that's a very important step in terms of the industry. It's not square peg round hole anymore. There's been a raft of negativity that's come out of the pandemic, but also some opportunity for positivity. And if we can embrace that as an industry, I think we'll be well placed to continue our successes.
So do you think all of this means that actually fintechs face kind of more challenges, more kind of barriers to entry, if you like?
I think it's an interesting question, isn't it? I think not necessarily. I don't think the digitization has created barriers to entry. I think it's created an opportunity for partnership. I think fundamentally we saw through the first few years of fintech a unbundling of the services. We looked at how individual facets of the financial ecosystem could be improved. I think we've sort of got to a place where we've established what that fragmentation looks like, and we're now in a very conscious rebuilding mode whereby we start to rebundle those processes to deliver better aggregate product. I think when you look at some of the early successes of fintech, everyone has their opinions on Revolut. The reason I really admire them is their ability to create a community. You have early adopters that really fostered the product and really embraced the idea of what Revolut was trying to create. I think you had the same with Monzo, right? Whether it be a Coral card, less functionally focused, but there was still an ideology behind what that was. And I think, taking that Monzo example, it talks to people wanting to and having the ability to now pick a brand that represents them. So I think, I don't know, we always come up with new terms for what finance is, but I think you're starting to get to a place where we almost have a level of emotional finance whereby you pick the product that you really feel is representative of you as an individual, and not just because you need a checking account or you need a debit card.
Mm. That's a really interesting term, actually. And so then do you think any fintechs coming to market, that's what they need to be focused on, is, what the consumer actually needs and wants, that needs to be at the heart of what they do then?
I don't we all, I think, I think it's, irrespective of where you sit in it, it's something that I push extremely hard in our business, is that we don't touch the consumer. We ultimately don't have a direct relationship with them. We service our clients who service their own customer. But if we don't understand the need of the people using the underlying product, how can we ensure that our product is best suitable to the market? So I think it's not a conversation that we should have about a particular segment of the ecosystem. It's that the ecosystem as a collective needs to be ensuring that the products they're building are ones that ultimately have applicability and resonate with the innovation and direction of general consumer trend and behavior today.
And I know you said that there isn't necessarily any more kind of barriers to entry, but obviously there are some hurdles that I guess fintechs need to overcome, aren't there, if they want to be successful in this space? So what are those?
Well, one is to develop. If we stepping away from trying to be a salesman and talk about tribe, I think one is to engender trust. I think it's extremely important that we as an industry continue to maintain that. We've had our challenges, we've had our successes. We don't need to go on about what happened last year, I think. But in order for a fintech to be successful, I think in the long term, there is still that separation of trust versus product value. And you look at that between some of the digital challengers versus the incumbents. I used this example the other day talking to someone, and my children would murder me if their Netflix stopped working. But I imagine taking that forward then into the way in which their financial services products worked. The age we live in now is that everything is expected immediately and things like that. But I'm not sure that they have the same level of trust relationship with a financial institution that my generation does. So now it's about taking away that and spreading that ideology of trust between various institutions to allow the product to win, irrespective of the underlying provider. I think in terms of the technology side of it, the digitization has ultimately led to an incremental increase in expectation at a consistent level. It's not like we're not now going, oh, we now need contactless, and 15 years later we're really excited because it's a ubiquitous offering. What we're now looking at is how we continually iterate. The example of open banking is a great one, in the sense that the explosion of opportunity we've seen in the space, whether it be through data aggregation, whether it be through payment initiation or account information, has been incredible. And you can't have underlying technology that doesn't support that growth. So coming back to being, my ultimate role as a salesperson and spokesman for Tribe, our argument would be that you need a modular architecture. You need someone that can anticipate the needs of the consumer before you necessarily recognize it. And so it's the exact reason we built Tribe in a sort of Lego-like fashion. You don't want to be a Jenga stack that tips over as soon as you start to add a little bit of functionality. You want that Lego-like architecture that ensures stability and scalability, I suppose, throughout the digitization process.
Yeah, talking about that kind of architecture, I mean, we've all heard it so many times now, but obviously the large banks have this legacy technology that they're often referred to as being saddled with, and that is then identified as a kind of a barrier to innovation. Do you think that's still the case with the larger banks, the incumbents, or are new technologies able to more quickly resolve this issue?
I would suggest that we are never going to fully replace the core bank stacks that sit today, not for a long time, because frankly, the amount of money you'd have to spend, the time and effort, they'd be redundant by the time you've done it because of that pace of digitization we've spent the last 15 minutes talking about. I think what new technology allows you to do is to compartmentalize product and therefore offer new innovative products without necessarily impacting the core offering you have today. So our positioning in terms of that is that we're never going to become Santander's payments processor. We recognize that. But what we can do is deliver new product in a siloed fashion that allows them to test, allows them to deliver competing levels of innovation to their peers in the challenger space without really harming their core business. So from our perspective, I think it's the opportunity to innovate and deliver value that sits outside of the incumbent stack that's the real opportunity for the bigger banks.
Yeah, and when you mentioned earlier about that kind of if Netflix were to go down, what your children might do to you. I mean, that's all well and good, isn't it? But obviously, when it comes to financial services, there's a lot more at stake, isn't there, for consumers if something doesn't go right, if they can't get access to their finances, whatever form that takes, right?
Oh, completely. I use it as an example that is just the highest level of stress that we have in our household, but I appreciate that
Yeah.
other households have other focuses. I think, of course, open access to finance, financial inclusion, is never a topic that should go away. I think it's very much about how we all deliver availability to all in terms of financial products and making sure that everyone has the opportunity to a financial life. I think that's where you get into interesting evolutions, and I'm not sure we were planning to lead the question this way, but ultimately, open banking was the foundational level of what open finance, open life can be. And when you start to look at the ability to accrue previous transaction information or credit scoring and make more appropriate risk-based decisions, actually what you're opening up the industry to doing is being more receptive to those that they couldn't necessarily evaluate before. And I think, ultimately we need to get to a place where we are all data centric and ultimately make a risk-based decision that allows the majority to access financial products, not just those that we believe we can monetize.
And let's come on to some of those. Obviously, we talked a lot about the pace of change, but other than that, obviously there are other kind of challenges, but also opportunities that are coming up in the payments space. So, what tools and strategies are there for payments providers and fintechs to be able to respond to some of these and tackle those challenges head on?
I don't want to sound too salesy, but I think a lot of it comes down to having a good. Let me take a step back. If we look at the initial discussion we were having, it's about finding product market fit and it's about finding USP. If you can't do that, then you're going to struggle. I think then it's about finding a technology partner that allows you to evolve that. So whether that be at the moment you want to provide a real-time FX product, but you might therefore want to aggregate the account information of several other accounts to allow you to authorize that in a sort of digital staged format, or whatever that may be, or you want to add a sort code and account number or an IBAN or interregional product. I think having a technology provider that is anticipating change is extremely important. I also think that you can look at some of the innovation today and recognize that where the market is going. We started with real-time payments, we've moved to open banking, embedded finance is on the way, and it's about how we deliver a seamless experience. So anticipation of market trends is obviously going to be important, but I think ultimately you need partners within your stable that anticipate and view the ecosystem in the same way.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the potential then that those partnerships have, because we've mentioned partners a few times, and obviously we talked earlier a little bit about some of that legacy tech that holds back the high street banks. So here's where partnerships can play a part, can't they, between those larger banks and fintechs? What kind of solution can they offer here, do you think?
I think it's subjective to the ultimate experience they're trying to deliver. I think coming back to that rebundling of fintech, the idea that you can deliver both the trust and the product ultimately delivers the end user a better outcome. When we talked about the fragmentation of responsibility, let's call it, between the incumbent bank that retains that trust and the fintech that delivers the innovation, ultimately putting those two pieces of the puzzle together gives you a really exciting opportunity to innovate. I think fundamentally, if you're looking at how we take that forward, I think it will be more of the same. I don't think that the banks can move quickly enough to keep up with the pace of innovation necessarily, and so partnership and M&A is always going to be a strategy. I think it's for the fintechs to continue to identify that opportunity.
Yeah, we have of course seen some quite high profile partnerships, haven't we, between some of the major banks and small fintechs, and there've been quite a few success stories, right? I mean, it seems to be a kind of relationship that works quite well.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that, right? I think ultimately you have a bank with a customer base, you have a bank with a need and a want to deliver new product, and they recognize that sometimes they're not the fastest to do that. That doesn't mean they don't have the great ideas. They just have other responsibilities. So I think it's then about, generally as a person or as a company or as an idea, understanding where your weaknesses are and trying to reinforce those and grow them is a good strategy. So that doesn't remove banks from that consideration either.
And before entering a partnership like this, is it important to consider culture? I mean, I know we talk about culture a lot when it comes to kind of M&A deals, for example, but that must be an important part of these partnerships as well, right? That the fintech and the large bank can find some kind of cultural exchange there, or whatever it is.
100%, 100%. I think it's about finding the right relationship with the right attitude and the right focus and the right desire for the outcome. If that outcome is regulatory or it's innovative or whatever that may be, you have a DNA as a business. I think, we're a young company, right? We're going through our sort of teenage years, let's call it. And I think our DNA is heavily focused on how we continue to innovate for tomorrow. And I think if you're looking for a technology partner from a cultural perspective, you want one that is not just going to deliver you the product today, but look for one that necessarily can continue to innovate with you. I mean, frankly, technology is generally considered expensive and very difficult to replace. So you want to make the right decision up front.
Yeah. Well, now seems like a good point as well to bring in your partnership with the open banking platform Tink. So can you tell us a bit more about that? What it is, how it builds on your offering?
Yeah, I think we need to take a step back. Yeah, I can, of course. I think there's 2 points to that. One is that technology companies, in my belief, do not focus their role as the nucleus of the payments ecosystem enough. When we built Tribe, and coming back to this Revolut example of community, we recognized that actually we are the central data depository and transactional flow for a number of our clients and a number of our key partnerships. So what we wanted to do was continue that mantra of enabling our clients to deliver new product or product that we believe is going to be the future of the payments ecosystem. I think then looking at the regulation itself in PSD2, the intent of it was democratization. It was the idea of to deliver open access, open finance, open banking, to the many. And I don't necessarily think we're quite there yet. The technical and economic hurdles don't necessarily enable the smaller fintech or the smaller incumbent to capitalize. Yes, there's a compliance requirement, and yes, we need to verify certificates and TPP access, but why would I, as an individual or corporate, want to go and try and deliver a new product on open banking when, frankly, faster payments is there, or my ability to deliver transactional information comes from the incumbent bank. So looking at those two problems, we felt like, well, if Tribe could play a role in this, there's a really exciting opportunity for fintechs to innovate without those barriers to entry. What we're effectively doing is democratizing the product, but actually enacting on what we believe the regulation was intended to do. So we went through this sort of procurement process of trying to find a partner that had a very like-minded attitude. And we came across Tink, and we've worked from a technology perspective. We're similarly aligned in terms of ensuring that the API structure and the availability is second to none. And I think then it was about embracing the idea of enabling all to benefit off the products that we've built. So we launched our partnership with Tink a few months ago. It's now live from a payment initiation perspective. We're seeing great end-to-end use cases over there. So I don't think card schemes go away, but anyone that does the modeling can understand that a fixed base pricing model has its certain benefits compared to percentage-based transaction costs. And I think what we're now really keen to continue doing is exploring the AIS use cases. So we've begun the work on that with them at the moment, and it will be about ensuring our customers have the ability to reenact confirmation of payee where it's not possible, or deliver data aggregation into their mobile applications. The idea of a partnership with someone so credible as Tink is to really push the boundaries, and I think that's ultimately the mantra that we want to maintain as a business. So it's an exciting time for us, and we're grateful that they've come on this journey with us.
Yeah, and during your kind of answer there, you referred to sort of regulation and kind of what needs to happen there. You said we weren't quite there yet with sort of the democratization, the kind of financial inclusion part. Can you explain a little bit more about kind of what needs to happen there, in your opinion?
Goodness me, I think it's a complicated answer. I think as a wider regulatory answer, I'm not sure the regulatory oversight goes far enough. We play such a pivotal role in the payments process, and frankly, have nominal oversight. And I don't agree with that. I don't see why a technology company shouldn't bear the same responsibility and oversight as the people holding the money. Fundamentally, we also control where that money goes. Whether we touch it or not, it's a different matter. I think from a payment services directive perspective, I just think it's about growth of the product itself. Any new commodity in a market, whether it's electric cars or travel to space, is going to become expensive until there's a way to economize it. And I think that will come from mass adoption through innovation and through applicable use cases. So I think it's up to those that have the opportunity to drive the industry forward to take that on and ensure the sort of scalability of it in the future. So frankly, it's more of the same, and we continue to innovate as an industry, and hopefully then we find a way to ensure that it's a ubiquitous offering.
And going back to the partnership with Tink, I mean, I know it's really early days. You only announced it, it only got underway a few months ago. But I mean, how long would you expect a partnership like that to last? I mean, I suppose what I'm asking is can partnerships be a kind of, in some cases, kind of a short-term way of working with something to perhaps roll out a product quickly to market, but also can they be a much longer term sort of partnership that plays out over many years?
Goodness me, I think to cover off the relationship we have with Tink, just from a sort of political perspective, we expect it to be a long one. We're hugely invested in it. Yeah. I think from a general fintech perspective, I think there are two options. I think ultimately you want to innovate, you want to try things out. There's not a try before you buy principle, but wherever you can ensure you have product market fit and an interesting opportunity for success before you necessarily capitalize it and put big money behind it, I definitely think that's a good option for a partnership. We run contracts from 6 months to 5 years, as a great example of that. And what we recognize is that not everyone has the ability to forecast long-term success, and therefore they need someone to iterate with. And this comes back to that principle of the 1%. Ultimately, we need to continue focusing on those individual opportunity, whether it be innovation, whether it be trying new things, and collectively we'll get close to that 100% success rate.
Let's look at the future now then, seeing as we've considered the kind of immediate hurdles that the payments industry faces. So say 5 years ahead from now, where do you hope that the payments and financial services industries will be, Alex?
I think I would love it to embrace the principle of the person becoming the payment. I think we are such a unique token, to use a technical term, that our ability to embrace new technology from a security perspective and things like that is going to be really centralized around us as an individual. I think we're very much on the path to invisibility within the payment space. That embedded finance principle will certainly evolve. So I would like to think that ultimately payments becomes a data-centric exercise. And certainly when we talk internally about Tribe's future in the midterm, 5 years for us is where we become a data business. Technology providers have built extremely smart pipes, and now it's about ensuring that those pipes continue to deliver value. So that's around analytics, it's around hyper-personalization, it's around seamless transaction authorization. And I think ultimately that will come down to both the ecosystem working towards a more secure and identifiable payments process, but also for us to almost be hidden. It's about the consumer wanting to go shopping and then having paid by the end of it. One-click payments has been around for a very long time now. I'm sure we can get a bit smarter than that these days.
And when you talk about sort of the person becomes the payment, can you give a kind of concrete example of that, how that might look?
Well, I think you see some of the Amazon Go examples. You've got the likes of FingoPay in the market that do a lot around biometrics. I think whether it's your finger, your iris, or your presence as a person, as a token, there's certainly an opportunity to identify you as a unique individual. And you look vastly different to me, and I think the ability for us therefore to be confused and misrepresented is quite nominal. I think the idea of that then allows me to embrace my shopping experience without consideration for, have I brought my wallet, have I brought my phone, do I remember my PIN, do I have the requisite pieces of information to make that transaction happen. I think it's about removing barriers to transactions or to purchase, and we're always going to be part of that process, so why not try and get to ground zero?
And does that ultimately make those kind of transactions more secure then?
I can't profess to be the security expert in our business, but I would suggest that there's certainly an opportunity to utilize the individual aspects of a human to ensure more security. I mean, my 4-digit PIN or my phone is quite well not readily available on the PIN side, but my phone sits next to me quite a lot. I'm sure someone could happily tap away without me knowing. They're not going to do that if it's my eye or my finger that they require.
Yeah. And you made a kind of reference there to where Tribe Payments might see itself in 5 years' time. Can you give us a bit more of a picture there of where you see the business?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try. 5 years is a long time, as we've talked about in terms of the pandemic. But I think, we spent 2 years building out the platform, and really the third year probably sort of flying the plane and building the last bits at the same time. I think from the next couple of years for us, it's about expanding the analytics capabilities of the system. Ultimately, we want to ensure that our customers have the opportunity to build that personalized service to really understand their customer as much as possible. And I think that starts with us. So our focus will certainly be on data centricity, and also about delivering a more wide product base. So, there are some great other opportunities for open banking, for general real-time payments and things like that we'll see in the future. So we just want to make sure we're ready and continue to have the success that we've had over the last 18 months.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly be watching this space in terms of Tribe Payments and all the work you're doing. So thank you very much for joining me today, Alex.
Thank you for having me, and yeah, pleasure.
And as well as thank you, Alex, I'd like to thank you for watching today's Open Banking Expo TV episode. This is the 5th in the series, available to stream from openbankingexpo.com via the on-demand section, where you'll also find all the latest news on open banking and open finance. That's all we've got time for now. Join us next time. Goodbye.